Hey guys, welcome back to Human Condition. This video is another video in our psychology series. This video is what is self-discrepancy theory and how do we stay true to ourselves. So this should be a pretty interesting one. Self-discrepancy theory is the idea that every person has three different versions of themselves. It's kind of cool. It's kind of similar to self-complexity theory and cognitive dissonance theory. And it suggests that when these three versions of ourselves are out of balance, we suffer from emotional discomfort. So basically everyone has an ideal, there's five main topics: the ideal self, the actual self, the alt self, the ideal other, and the alt other. I'll explain what these mean in a sec, but it's pretty interesting theory. So the ideal self is basically the version of us we want to be. The alt self is the version of us we feel like we should be. And self-discrepancy is when there's a discrepancy between our ideal self, our actual self, or alt self. The ideal self, this is the version we want to be. So if you want to be like a person living on a yacht with like $1 million bucks getting litty, this would be the ideal self. The alt self is the version we feel like we should be. When an ideal self and an alt self conflicts, this means the version you want to be and the person you should feel like you should be conflicts. So what this does is this causes a massive amount of guilt and feelings of shame, because who you want to be and who you should be is conflicting. So this happens if someone, for example, let's say you want to have a reliable job. You feel like you should have a reliable job. Let's say you want to be a famous actor. The confliction is your ideal self is to be a famous actor, but you feel like you should have a reliable, stable job. This causes the emotional discomfort between the two. But more so, another example is another confliction with this: the ideal self and another self-discrepancy is the ideal self and the actual self. Your actual self, the three ideal, actuals, and alt. Your actual self versus the ideal self. This is where you want to be versus where you are. If you feel like you're not, the confliction here is this feeling will always cause if you're not living up to your ideal self, the feelings that this produces, usually the confliction between your ideal self and your actual self, is disappointment and sadness. Then you have the confliction between your alt self and your actual self. This is the feeling of I should be doing this, or I should, for example, I should be graduating college, or I should have this A. And when you don't hit that criteria, there's the self-discrepancy between your alt self, the way you think you should be, and your actual self, the way you are. So not tough, not good. And the feelings these produce are other two negative feelings: self-contempt and guilt, feeling bad. You're like, I should have done this. At least you're not sad though. At least you're not sad and disappointed now, but now you're angry at yourself and you're guilty. You feel guilty. However, I argue a little bit of anger is good for motivation, but still, you're angry at yourself, you feel guilty. If your alt self and your actual self conflicts. And the worst thing when I was researching this is apparently your ideal self and your alt self can become closely linked. And this has a lot of positive and negative effects. A lot of people suffer from this. I feel like I sadly, every once in a while, might suffer from this. And it's when the version you want to be is closely linked to who you feel like you should be. So this is like if you mess up with tiny things, the average person might just feel sad and disappointed when they mess up their tiny goals. But if you're a person with your ideal self and your alt self, who you should be and who you want to be is closely linked, you won't only feel just sad and disappointed, you'll feel all four negative emotions: sad, disappointed, angry, and guilty at the same time, which really sucks. Every time you miss a certain goal. However, I'll argue this is probably the biggest motivation for most people, is feeling all these painful emotions, because it helps you to stay driven. That being said, there's also, those are the three main topics: ideal, actual, and alt. If you're ideal, conflicts with your actual self, ideal self, and your actual self. If you feel like you're not living up to your ideal self as your actual self, you feel sad and disappointed. Feel like you're not living up to who you should feel like, you'll be angry at yourself, self-contempt, and guilty. Your alt self and your actual self. But there's also alt other and ideal other. And this is how we feel other people want us to be and how we should be. And this adds a whole nother level of complicatedness to this theory, which is pretty interesting. And this is the idea that you're trying to balance in life the people you love, who they want you to be, who they think you should be, who you want to be, and who you think you should be. And it's if you are like rely highly on social feedback, you might suffer from trying to balance all four of these, causing immense amount of stress because you're not sure who you are anymore. You might even lose who you are. This is why the video is called "Who Stay True to Yourself." Because is it my ideal to be this way? Is it their ideal? Is it how I should be? Is it who they want me to be, etc.? And this is also another confliction you might have in life with this theory stuff. But positively, there's two coping methods to handle this. Self-regulation, the idea of taking action to become that ideal version of yourself, the ideal version they want you to be, the version you feel like you should be, and the version they think you should be. This is called self-regulation. And there's another unhealthy version called avoidance that people take, and just procrastinating taking action to be that ideal self and the version they should be. That is self-discrepancy theory. I feel like I didn't describe it well enough, but basically, final description, self-discrepancy theory and how do we stay true to ourselves. Self-discrepancy theory suggests that in life, our ideal self, our actual self, our alt self, our ideal other, and our alt other are all a constant confliction. Who we want to be, who others want us to be, who we should be, who others think we should be, are always conflicting, and makes us hard. And if we get too lost in all four of these combinations, we might lose who we are because we don't know if we're living our life to our ideals or other people's ideals, our shoulds or other people's shoulds. And the key is just to find out what of these four is most important to you and live by that key, and mainly what your ideal and what your alt is in life. So to stay true to yourself, you just have to stay true to what is most important to you. Is it other people's ideals or your own personal ideals? And it should mostly be probably your own personal ideals. Also, another thing with this self-contempt, anger, this is probably a controversial opinion, but I think a little bit of anger at yourself is a good feeling. Not too much, because anger is the motion of motivation. So if you're never angry at yourself, you're never growing as a person. So the self-contempt you feel with not being the person you should be is not too much, obviously, but it's a little bit good because that anger you have for yourself makes you take actions to be a better person. Not because you're like, why am I not achieving this great? Feel that anger towards yourself, you're now motivated to change that possibility. The same with like relationships. If you get your anger towards other people and their anger towards you helps the friendship, the relationship grow, as long as it's only a little bit. The only problem is in life is when you're sad at yourself or disappointed or sad, like the ideal and actual, because that sadness doesn't motivate you. Realize what you want makes you not take action to change the person you are and who you want to be. And also, the same way with relationships, if you your sadness, it shows you what you truly want in a relationship, in a friendship, but you're not taking action. Anger is more important because it helps you take action to repair that friendship and relationship. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I explained this well enough. But as always, thanks again for watching. Like, subscribe if you want. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.